Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. This is your host, Linda Joy, and I'm honored that you've joined me for today's inspiring show. Are you being pulled or called to live a bigger life? A life that fills you with passion and purpose? Do you find yourself convincing yourself that the life you have now should be good enough? Are you smothering the dreams in your heart because of limiting beliefs? Well, today's conversation will help you shift all of that. Joining me today is life coach and dream life designer Karen Spaiches of KarenSpaiches.com. And we'll be talking about how she followed the calling in her heart and walked away from a 24-and-a-half-year leadership role to follow her passion. Today, Karen is empowering women to rediscover, reawaken, and realize their life's desires. Karen is a personal life coach and dream life designer with over 25 years of leadership experience. Karen works with women who feel disconnected from what they really want and need in life, who feel responsible for others, we all know what that feels like, and who have a hard time putting themselves first. Working together, Karen and her clients create clarity around the life they are longing for, identify limiting beliefs that keep them stuck in the good enough, and develop goals and actions to gain traction on the life they dream of. As you'll discover, Karen is passionate about guiding her clients' transformational journey using her unique blend of love, nurturing, and accountability. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Linda. I'm very excited to be on your show today.
Well, I have to say, your story is like so many women in my community stories, including my own. We wake up in the middle of this life that we've created, that we've had come to believe that we truly wanted, and we find that we feel like a stranger in our own lives. And as I shared in your intro, you walked away from a 24-and-a-half-year leadership role and job to follow your passion. When was it on your journey that you got the nudge that you were disconnected from your truth in the life that you envisioned?
Well, actually, I had quite a few nudges. I didn't listen very well at the time, I guess, or at least I didn't really understand what those nudges meant. And just to give you a little of the backstory, my work and my career became my life because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And I know so many women can resonate with that. I felt like I was driven to become successful, both in my corporate world, in my parenting world, in my life world, everywhere. I just really felt like I needed to be perfect because really deep down I never felt like I was enough. So my feelings of not being enough really led me to believe that I wasn't worthy of anything more than I had at the time. So I stayed in that career much longer than I should have because I was afraid that I wasn't worthy of more. And I always asked that question, that shouldn't I be thankful for what I had? So it really was about 7 or 8 years ago that I found a mentor at the time, and she started me on that path of seeing what it was like to really be me. She allowed me an opportunity to, use my creativity and my strengths to build a team that was successful, and that wasn't the norm in our company. One of the things that I had worked on was changing the culture of my team. So I introduced, I don't know if you remember the fish philosophy.
The big fish and jumping in the bowl?
The fish from the Pike Seafood Company out in Portland, Oregon, and they have this philosophy of play and being happy and just enjoying your job. And at the time, I was looked at like I was crazy. No one really supported that or understood that, and this mentor did. And she really taught me that true leadership is believing in people and giving them support to become who they're meant to be. So I finally felt like I had kind of come into my own. It was an opportunity for me to figure out what I wanted my career to look like. Did I really want to stay in accounting, or did I want to go into leadership? And I really figured out that grooming and nurturing my employees was what brought me joy. So I just kept working to get better. And then I was put on this huge project at the time, and that's when the dark side kind of started spiraling out of control for me. Even though I enjoyed the nurturing part of my employees, I was being called to do this huge project, and that meant that I had to play with the big boys. And I wasn't really good at that. My personality is not to climb the ladder. It's to help people, and it's to break the best out of people. So during that point, there was this continual threat that my organization was going to be moved out of my current one in finance and moved into another one that I really didn't want to be a part of. And I knew that they were going to stifle me. It wasn't how I wanted to show up with the world, and I knew that our values didn't really align with each other. So that was for about 2 or 3 years, and I kind of allowed that to fester and build, and it created a lot of health issues, both mentally and physically. I remember one night sitting in the high school parking lot waiting for a hockey booster club meeting to start, and I thought I'd take advantage of a few free minutes, and I was reading some documents, and the more I read, the more angry and upset I became, and I could really feel my blood boiling. You can probably hear it in my voice right now as I think back to this situation. And at the point, I actually thought I might be having a stroke. I had this blinding headache, and I couldn't see clearly. And that was kind of my first nudge to say, hey, something's not quite right. You really need to take a step back and evaluate what is it that you want out of your life and out of your career. So I did go to the doctor, and I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. I had to be put on medication, and it all would just always come back to this feeling of being inadequate and that I wasn't good enough. And people were going to find out. At some point, they would find out about me. And unfortunately, that anxiety was the first clue that I really didn't listen to. So part of that, I believe, is because I didn't really have a spiritual connection to anything at that point in time. I was feeling very lost and alone, very worried about moving to this new organization. And really at the time, I really had no idea that this was the universe's way of telling me that things needed to change. And Linda, I don't know if you've ever looked back and clearly seen those signs that something needed to change, but you just couldn't see them at the time.
Oh yes, many times. And like you, I ignored them at the beginning because my fear was bigger than my dreams.
Exactly. And I didn't really know what my dreams were at that point in time. So I wasn't able to act on that nudge. So I just continued to try to master perfection everywhere that I was. Home, work, community. I just really tried to be everything for everyone except myself. And I would say my second nudge, and one of the bigger ones, came about 3 years ago when I was going for my annual mammogram appointment. And I got called back 3 times for pictures, and I knew that something probably wasn't quite right. And the nurse came back and had asked me to come with her. And at that point in time, I was so alone and scared, and my life literally flashed before my eyes. All I could think about was my husband and my 2 boys. And so they told me that there was a suspicious spot that needed to be biopsied, and they did it right then and there, and I cried during the entire thing. The doctor told me that it was going to be one of 2 things, and it was either cancer or it was what he called a radial scar. But the chances of it being a radial scar and being something that could be taken care of very easily were pretty slim. My mom is a 2-time breast cancer survivor, so the chances of cancer were far greater. And that was a pretty scary point in my life. I was stunned, and I had no idea what to do. All I know is that if God made this turn out okay, I promised that I would make changes. I'm sure a lot of us can probably resonate with that.
Oh, yes.
very traumatic, happens. You just want everything to be okay. So at that point in time, I really vowed that my work was going to become second priority. My health and my family they had to come first. And I found, or I guess my awakening was, that my striving for that perfection everywhere got me nowhere except sick, mentally and physically. So I had gotten the results back, and the doctor was actually very shocked. He said, I didn't feel as though I was going to have this news to give you, but it is a radial scar. It's not cancerous, but it has to be removed. And, at that point in time, I was just so shocked. I was prepared for the worst and received the best news that I could. And I felt like I had this another chance. Maybe I was good enough. Maybe there is hope for me. And as I was going through the appointments, I'm a why person. I need to understand why things happen. I started asking a lot of questions and how this might have happened. And he told me that the main factor was stress.
Wow.
And that's kind of when that light bulb finally went off for me, that I realized I pretty much had done this to myself. I wasn't going to stop being perfect for anything until this point, and I really had to become physically sick for me to finally listen. And, just going through that surgery, it was painful and it was emotional, and I hope I never have to experience it again. And anyone who's gone through that lumpectomy surgery can understand it really took all of my strength that I had to make it through that operation, the placement of the needle in my left breast prior to surgery, so that the doctor knew the location of that spot to be removed. When I think back in that moment and how I felt, it was really one of the most heroic things that I ever really did outside of my two kids. And I get a little choked up because it was really a life-changing event for me to understand.
And what I'm hearing is it was life-changing on every level. It was life-changing on the physical because you were going to reclaim your health. It was life-changing on the emotional because something major shifted in you where, sad to say, it took this to do it, but you now saw your worth and were willing to claim it. And then it sounds like on the spiritual level, you committed to opening up a connection to something bigger than yourself. And I want to talk more about that when we come back from our break. And everyone, I want you to sit with everything that Karen just shared, because so many of us are caught up in what I have always referred to as Superwoman syndrome, where we strive for the perfect life at the cost of our inner peace, our health. And we'll talk more about that in a moment when we come back from commercial break with Karen Spaiches of KarenSpaiches.com.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Inspiration for a Woman's Soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
The truth is, you can't change the world if you're broke. I know, I tried. Isn't it time you turned your life's calling into a profitable, freedom-based business? I'm Michelle Barr. Join me every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern for Sacred Success.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back to Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy and my special guest, Karen Spaiches of KarenSpaiches.com. And before the break, we were talking about her moment lying on the surgery table, about to have surgery, and knowing at a deep core level that everything in that moment had shifted emotionally, spiritually, physically. So, Karen, so many women, myself included, we wait for that, I call the cosmic 2x4. You know, like you, I ignored the little intuitive nudges that came and kept coming for many years until I had a mini stroke at age 40. in a previous business, which, like you, I ignored all the signs. How, that day walking out of the hospital, did you feel an internal shift in you?
I felt like there was something deeper within, but at that point in time, I really didn't understand it. It was, like I said, I had no spiritual connection at the time. So it was almost like this, a flower budding, like starting to bloom, maybe just coming out of the ground like they are right now in the springtime, where I know there's something ready to blossom, but I still wasn't quite sure what it was. I just knew that I needed to change my focus in my life. It needed to move from feeling guilt and stress to something that was more positive. And unfortunately, it still took me about a year to go through that process of really understanding what it is that I needed. My reality, or my fears, actually did become my reality as far as my organization moving to that different group. And at that point in time, that was kind of my final moment where I had another breakdown. Mentally, it was really the beginning of the end of my corporate career and the start of my new journey in life. And at that point in time, I even had a peer tell me that when I moved to this new organization, don't let them see you be emotional. They won't take you seriously and they won't give you respect. And I remember that comment very vividly because it confirmed that I was no longer meant to be where I was. I am not the kind of person that can hold my emotion in. I'm a very passionate person and my buttons get pushed easily either way. And I knew that if I couldn't live authentically and come to work every day that way, that I wasn't going to be happy. So in 2014, that's when I really started thinking about what it was that I wanted. I came home from work every day and I was just exhausted. I'd get up exhausted. I'd come home exhausted. I couldn't do anything that I enjoyed. I couldn't even cook for my family. It was that, I guess, depressing for me. All I could really focus on was how terrible my situation was. And I couldn't see the amazing things and people that I had in my life. So I started filling my life with gratification through food, shopping, alcohol. I'd spend money like it was water, and then I'd worry about it afterwards. The first thing that I did when I came home from work was grab a beer and sit on the couch and just be miserable. And I really made myself sick with what I did. Everything that I did was so out of alignment with who I was and what I really wanted. And I'd always been that person that people would say, geez, you just have everything together. I wish I could be like you. And I was just crumbling inside and no one could see that. So that led me to that major crossroad to say, I've got to make different decisions. So in, I guess, it would be January of 2015. So last year, that's when I made the decision to take my life back. I was literally sick and tired of feeling the way that I did, and I knew that I wasn't good to anyone in the state that I was in, especially not myself. And that's when I finally woke up to it. At that point in time, though, I was really still lost and confused. I didn't really know what to do or how to do it or where to even start. But that piece that I said earlier that felt like it was blossoming, it was really starting to bubble up to that point that I couldn't ignore it. I needed to make change. And I wanted to be free. I wanted to be able to shine my light in the world in an authentic way, but I really had no idea what that meant at the time. So it
just felt like a pulling, right? A calling, like a knowing. Even though you didn't know the next steps, you just knew that that's what you were being called to do.
Yes, and I just had this feeling deep down that I was done. I didn't have to worry about this corporate career anymore, that something was going to happen and something would be activated and I would figure out what that right thing was. So for me, what I did was, part of me is very much an analyzer. Like I said, I like to know why and understand things. So I really spent a lot of time trying to understand what it was that I needed to feel whole and authentic. What did that mean to me? So I came up with, I guess, my wish list of things that I really wanted and what I would no longer tolerate. And I came up with 7 things. Do you want me to share those?
Yes, I would love you.
I think it might help. Okay. The first and foremost was that I wanted to be home with my boys. They are 18 and 21, so they're getting ready to fly the coop, and I always felt guilty for not being home with them. So that was my first thing that I wanted to do, or that I knew that was a necessity for me. And I knew that I wanted to be my own boss and do things my way, but to be a role model for my kids, to not settle, because that's what I realized that I had been doing for the last 24 years. I knew that I really wanted to work from home so that I could work my own hours and from wherever I was. So if we wanted to travel, I could do that and still have my work with me. I knew that I never wanted to return to corporate America again. It's just not for me. I also knew that I wanted to continue my own personal growth and development path and really learn how to live more in the moment and authentically from the heart. I struggle with living in the moment. I'm a recovering perfectionist, so living in the moment is something that I'm learning, and it really is a pretty amazing thing. I knew that I wanted to help others and share what I learned, and I really wanted to connect with others and be a catalyst for creating lasting change in their lives. And I've taken a lot of different personality tests and different things like that, and they always come back to the same core meaning. And what is most important to me is establishing genuine and deep connections with people that I care about. And I felt like I wasn't able to do that in the corporate world. That was being stifled. So that was really important to me. So after I made up that list, I still wasn't really anywhere further, but I thought, okay, well, what about all of these things scare me? Because, like you had said earlier in the program, a lot of times our limiting beliefs and our fears are what stop us and keep us stuck in that good enough. So I wanted to try to nail those things down. And I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of questions here that I had that a lot of people can resonate with. But my first question was, what business would I even start? I had to pay for health insurance. How would I do that? What if I failed? How do I even do this? And what makes me think that I deserve the things that I want, those 7 things I listed? And, of course, what if we end up living in a box? Those are always the scary things. So really I just started to tackle each question one by one. And I started with, on a deep level, what made me stay in corporate America for so long, despite that fear and inauthenticity and not wanting to play with the big boys, as I had called it. And I realized that my deepest and greatest experiences were when I was able to meet with my employees one-on-one, working to make their dreams and desires come true. And I often had employees seek me out for coaching, and I recognized at that point in time that that was my gift. And one of the first questions that I would always ask them would be, if you could do one thing in your career, what would it be? What is it that lights you up? And most often they weren't sure. They were very young, in their 20s, unsure of their career path. And the fun part for me was to just keep asking them questions and listening to what they said and nurturing them and encouraging them. But most importantly, I was able to hear things that they weren't saying. And I think that's one of my strengths, is being able to do that. And then being able to clarify what they wanted and the life they wanted, and then what challenges that they would need to face. So using my leadership skills and my management skills, we would create action plans, and they would begin to take small actionable steps towards their dreams and desires. And I had so many people become something different than what they started out in my group. They moved to different organizations within the company, or they left the company, but they were doing what they wanted. And that was, I felt like I was living my legacy through them.
And you know what I'm hearing too, Karen? It's just a thread that just hit me before we go to break. Is the thread I'm hearing is, though you may not have been able to see it at the time, the work you did in the corporate world, in the role that you played, in the leadership role that you played, was preparing you for your life's purpose.
Absolutely.
And I look back on all the conversations I've had on this radio show as well as through my community with Aspire magazine, and I'm finding that there are no accidents in our life. When we do the inner work, we will see that we will always, in every moment, being led to our true purpose. It's up to us to follow the signs and take action, which is exactly what you did. And in a few moments, we're going to pick up this conversation. We're going to take a short commercial break, and then we'll be back with Karen Spaiches of KarenSpaiches.com for more inspiring conversation.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Isn't it time for you to listen to your own internal compass, your intuition, rather than listening to all those around you? When you learn how to navigate using your intuition, you'll discover how to hear your soul's whispers so you live a life of purpose, joy, and abundance. Soul-wise living mentor Laura Clark provides women with the empowering tools and support to help them tame their inner critic, calm their emotions, and ground themselves so they can hear, trust, and act upon their inner guidance. If you're ready to awaken your intuition, visit soulwiseliving.com to schedule a complimentary Sacred Soul chat, read Laura's inspiring blog posts, and discover an array of free supportive resources.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle. Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back to Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy and my special guest, Karen Spaiches. Karen, before the break, we were just talking about how our life prepares us for our life's purpose. And have you found that with the women that you're serving now, that when you start working with them, they can't see or they feel they wasted years of their life, but in reality, all the skill sets and life lessons that they learned over that period of time was to really hone what they're meant to do now?
Absolutely. That reminds me of my coach, and what she had told me was that we're on a heroine's journey, and that we all, every one of us, are the heroines of our own life. And life is challenging, and to find and live our purpose requires courage, as well as openness and vulnerability. And some of us are lucky and find that passion very quickly. And others, like myself and a lot of other women, have to take that road of trials. It's only when we've survived something traumatic or that we didn't think that we could handle that we realize that we've really been in training to serve others who are still struggling. And I only discovered that I was the true heroine of my life when I got completely disillusioned with my corporate lifestyle. And I really found that I was stronger and wiser than I had ever known or appreciated about myself before. So that awareness of myself and that reawakening happened at a point where I feel it needed to happen. One of the things that I really believe in is that we're all where we're supposed to be. So even though we might wish that we were further along in our career or we've made different choices, we're exactly where we need to be. And it reminds me of when I was getting ready to go to college. My parents tried to convince me to be a teacher. And of course I didn't listen because my parents at the time, they didn't know what they were talking about. And I often reflected on those conversations with regret. Like, Karen, how could you not have listened? They were right. This is what you should have done. You've wasted all of these years. And I realized, again, that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, that my choices that I've made in my career and in my life, they formed me to be the person that I am today. And while I didn't become a typical teacher, my career in my leadership role and as a life coach is allowing me to share my gifts through writing and creating and sharing with others. So there's no regret anymore, but it took a lot of inner work to understand that there can't be regret. That was my training. That was my practice to get me to where I'm supposed to be and to understand that it's where I need to be.
Oh, it's so good to hear you say that, because for so many women, I think they still struggle with regret. And the longer you hold on to regret, or sometimes even resentment for your past, you are sabotaging your future. And I did that for the first 30 years of my life, so I'm speaking from experience. And it was when I embraced my path and began to open up to, my spiritual source and open up to just the gratitude and love and joy and everything in that vibration, I began to look backwards and go, oh my God, I was being prepared for exactly the work I'm doing here today, in this moment, on this show with you. And that's why I'm so passionate about bringing women like you, Karen, who have lived their own hero's journey, right? Shero's journey, as I like to say, and are now using their gifts to transform other women's lives. So I like to use my media platform to spotlight women like you to say, listen, if we can do it, if we can do this inner work and shift our lives and find our life's purpose, I think it inspires other women to see themselves in our stories.
Absolutely.
Now, how did you reconnect with yourself and your bigger purpose? Like, were there steps after you wrote that list of 7 things? I know that helped you get really clear. And then you began working with the coach last year. What steps did you start to take to get closer to the work you're doing today?
So one of the foundational components of my signature program, which is a 6-month-long program, is discovering the real you. That's where I started. I needed to figure out who I was and get rid of the expectations that others had of me, that I had of myself, getting rid of the shoulds in my life, and really just going back and figuring out what is it that I love, what do I love to do. And going through that process, there were a lot of things that I had forgotten. I love to learn, so I'm always reading something. I read for pleasure and always something for self-improvement. There's always 2 books going on in my life, and it's really just for the sheer joy of learning something new, whether it's being in a new town in my fictional book or learning something for my own self-improvement and discovery. And so that was really the first thing that I did was, okay, who am I and what is it that I like to do? And then really the first act of self-care, I guess you could say, that I did to create that major breakthrough was practicing gratitude.
Oh, yeah.
And I really never understood that concept, but I was fascinated with it. My coach had talked to me about it, and I was just, I tried to get everything that I could. What does it mean? How do I practice it? And when I really dug in, I started to understand the benefits of it, and that actually became my free offer for my new coaching business. That was one of the first things that I wrote for my new website and for my business.
It's such a powerful, life-changing concept, and like you said, until you start practicing it, you don't realize how powerful it is to shift your inner energy, which then, of course, shifts what manifests in the outside world.
Exactly. And even when I bring the concept out to clients at first, the response is always, okay, yeah, sure, I can write down 3 things. And, everyone can do that. Everyone can write down 3 things that they're grateful for, but it's really understanding what you're replacing that gratitude with or for, I guess.
Yeah.
And what I realized was, I had mentioned earlier that I practice gratification. And once I started looking at gratitude, I realized that gratification needed to be rerouted, that I needed to put that into more positive actions and behaviors. So when I started my journal in May of last year, it really did take me a few months to really understand what I was supposed to get out of it. So I would encourage people that if you've tried a gratitude practice in the past and maybe you've only lasted a few weeks, you really do need to give it some time for it to begin activating inside, and like you said, changing the way that you look at things and how you appreciate things. And when I finally understood what it meant, when I realized that I was happy with exactly what I had, I didn't need anything more. I didn't need to go shopping. I didn't need to drown my sorrows in beer and food and all of those things. I realized that I have a wonderful and supportive husband. He, for 2 years, tried to get me to quit my job, and I said no because of the guilt that I felt for taking care of my family. But he really supported me. He knew that wasn't where I was supposed to be. I have, like I mentioned, I have 2 beautiful boys that are now turning into men, and they're caring and loving individuals, and I realized that I helped create that. I have a cozy house that is decorated all in beach theme, which is where I would love to be. So I surround my things with the things that I love, and I was embarking on my dream career, and I was so excited about the work that I had to do, even though it really scared the heck out of me. Even doing a radio show today is something new for me, but it's also exciting, and you never know what's around the corner.
Exactly. And I want to touch what you were talking about a moment ago when you said everyone can write down 3 things in a gratitude journal. But I don't know about you, Kim, and what I found shifted is not the writing of it, but as I wrote it, to actually feel the gratitude for the item, for the thing that I was writing about. Because if we did it from rote, like, oh yeah, I'm going to write these 3 things, no wonder you become disenchanted with the process. But when you feel it and bring the essence of gratitude into your heart as you're writing, do you notice that that's the shift? That's the energy that really inspires transformation?
Absolutely. And that was really, I guess, one of my other aha moments during the self-discovery stage was when I began understanding gratitude and began studying about abundance and the law of attraction and what all of that was about. I realized it all tied in with the gratitude practice. And I realized that abundance wasn't necessarily relegated to money. So when I always heard about that before, that would be where I went. I would think, oh, abundance, that means money and I don't have a lot of it, or, it was really a negative connotation for me. So when I recognized that abundance comes in so many other forms, like love and time, happiness, nature, the things that I was now experiencing through gratitude, I recognized that your heart naturally just kind of begins to open, and you feel connected to something so much greater than the physical world. You really begin seeing things in a whole new light and learn to appreciate life in the moment, which is, like I said, something I've really been working towards. And that gratification really also helps connect me to my inner wisdom. Something that, like I said, I never had listened to before. Obviously, it took me a few times to have those cosmic 2x4s hit me before I made some changes. But I really learned how to go inside and look for answers rather than looking to outside forces or that outside gratification.
That's another common thread that I've heard is so many of us look outside of ourselves for happiness, joy, love, our self-worth, but it isn't until we start turning inward after a cosmic 2x4 that we see that what we were yearning for outside ourselves was within us all along. And it sounds like that you came to that awakening also, that truth.
I did, and I actually have 2, I think, very fantastic moments in my life that really helped that connection and solidified that spiritual connection that I had mentioned earlier that I didn't have. And one of them was a meditation that I listened to connect to my angels. Angels fascinate me, and I'm not sure why, but I absolutely believe in them and listen to their messages. And I also believe that I had a dream from God. And both of these experiences happened during a time of doubt and uncertainty for me. It was when I was leaving my career. I had those 7 goals that I wanted, and I was striving for those for the last 25 years. And in 4 months, I managed to figure them all out and quit that job. So I was in that time of, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing for my family, for myself? And so I was really unsure where I was going and if things were even going to work out. So I did that 10-minute meditation. That's all it was. And I met my guardian angels, and they presented themselves to me. They gave me their names. There's been Joy, Mary Frances, and Maggie. And I felt so amazing. I just felt like I had this renewed connection to something that I didn't necessarily understand, but I didn't need to. It was
bigger. It was bigger. It was just a knowing that came through you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it was like a clear, I don't have to understand this, but it feels in alignment, it feels right, and I'm going to trust it. And that began your spiritual, like what I say, call reconnection, because we're never disconnected. We just have a lot of static and stuff that blocks our connection. It sounds like that was the moment when everything reconnected for you.
It was, absolutely. And I remember telling my aunt about my story, and she just looked at me and she said, I just can't believe how much you've changed and how much you've grown in just these last few months. And, you know, for her to hear that story, she used to be a nun, so that was something that she could connect with. And she just felt like, you know, that truly is a transformation right there. And a few nights after that meditation is when I had this dream. And my husband and I, we were granted the ability to fly, which I do not like to fly, so it's kind of interesting that was the ability that we had. And we were soaring over a forest, or flying over this forest. And I said to him, oh my gosh, look at the beauty in these trees. My heart, it's just so open right now to receive. And I can still recall me saying those words very clearly and vividly. And then I heard the words, you are here to serve me and do my work. And so that, I believe, was God speaking to me, that you have made the right choice. You know, there's no more uncertainty anymore for you.
No, it was your validation.
Yes, absolutely. And I could never have received that, I don't think, without opening my heart and opening to gratitude. I really believe that is the source of my connection.
I love this, and I want to talk more about this when we come back from our break. And
okay.
I want to talk about also like some steps that you recommend for any of our listeners who struggle with gaining clarity in connection with their life goals. So we'll be right back from our commercial break in a moment, and I'll be returning with Karen Spaiches of KarenSpaiches.com.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ladies, it's time to remove the veils of pain, shame, and self-doubt that are smothering your inner light and leave you feeling disconnected from the truth of who you are. You are a radiant, divine woman of strength, love, and wisdom who deserves to live a life of joy, love, and inner peace. Life and spiritual coach Mal Duane, who is often referred to as the champion for restoring women's self-worth, supports women in stepping out from behind the energetic veils that separate them from the truth of who they are. It is possible to move through your fears, break through limiting beliefs, and release the shackles of shame and self-judgment. And you don't have to do it alone. Take the first step in reclaiming your life by visiting malduanecoach.com for empowering resources and supportive services.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome, welcome. This is Linda Joy of Inspired Conversations and my special guest, Karen Spaiches. And a few moments ago, we were talking about how we receive that, that I call it sacred reminders. And one of my hashtags, everyone knows me on social media, is sacred reminder. And I believe it's like, just this divine download that we receive that kind of validates that we're on the right path. And Karen, before the break, you were sharing how gratitude opened you up to receive your messages, which then opened you up to trust the path ahead of you. And so for women who are in that same cycle that you've been talking about during the show, what are some steps that you recommend for them, for women who struggle with gaining clarity and connection with their life goals, who feel like like you were a couple of years ago, floundering and not sure how to move forward, but they know they're being called for something bigger.
Yep. Well, like I mentioned earlier, I feel that discovering, I guess I should say rediscovering who you are and reconnecting with yourself first is the first step. And that's really the first step that I teach in my coaching program. So not only do we go through and create clarity around your goals, so more like that left brain kind of thinking, the very concrete things, I also focus on the mindset shifts. And I feel that is where, I guess, the proof is in the pudding type thing is in our mindset. We need to be able to change the way we think. And so after I had gone through my rediscovery of myself, I really had to still face my fears because I hadn't really touched on those. So I felt like I was at a point that I could start looking at those fears and what makes me scared? Why do I stop myself? Why did I stop myself for 25 years of seeing that I wasn't in the right place? And so I would say that's another step is to don't be afraid to face your fears. Call them out. Why, for me, it was why I wasn't enough. And I did a lot of digging, and I actually have been able to pinpoint where that not enough came from. And actually, it goes way back to second grade. So, you might have to go a little bit far into your past to kind of understand. Well, once I understood that, I did a lot of journaling, and I wrote a lot of forgiveness letters, both to myself and to other people. I reflected, I meditated, and what I found was I slowly gave up trying to be perfect and focused more just on getting things done and taking action. So if there was something that scared me, okay, you know what? I'm going to just do it. I'm going to just kind of expand that comfort zone a little bit farther and just take the chance. And I would always ask myself, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the best thing that could happen? And what happens if you do nothing? And so that's how I was always able to talk myself into going to that next step. And what I realized when I gave up trying to be perfect, nobody noticed. And I felt like that was pretty cool. I was showing up as the real me. I didn't have to be this perfect person that they idolized because they really liked me for who I was. And I really started making more heartfelt connection after that point. And I was getting compliments on the passion that I had for what I was doing and how courageous I was for leaving that job. And, these were all these things that had scared me and were my fears that I never saw in myself prior to this journey. And now this is what other people were seeing. And that's who I wanted them to see. I didn't want them to see someone who was Martha Stewart and always gave the best parties and always had party favors and all of these perfect things. I wanted them to see the real me. So I would say that those would be the first two steps, is really rediscovering yourself. And then as part of that is understanding your fears and what is it that stops you. And just try to take action. Just look at your comfort zone and what's something outside of your comfort zone, just a little bit, and can you do it? And yeah, you can if you put your mind to it. So those would be my first two things.
But they're powerful things because everyone listening can do them. And I always believe that it's taking the baby steps towards our dreams, even when the fears are present, is what begins to shift. And it's funny because I've shared this, but this little quote has been on my computer monitor, looking at it now, for many years. And I typed it out because I'm very visual, and I put it on pretty paper, and it says, "My dreams are stronger and more real than any false fears." And because I'm visual, I put the word dreams in bold purple font, capital letters, and I put the word fears in small little letters in italics with a period between each letter to remind myself that I want to stay on my path. I know fears are going to come up every time we get to the next level or every time we challenge ourselves. But as you've discovered, it's so worth it when we can show up and live our life authentically and not based on others, tying in our worth to the perception of others. It's such a liberating, freeing way to live.
It is. And you see that people react so much more genuine back to you. That's kind of the interesting thing is people are, especially women, we're afraid to be vulnerable at first because you had mentioned earlier that the Superwoman effect. And we all have that. We all feel that we have to be everything to everyone, and we don't want to let anyone in and see those little cracks. And then when I started really being me, people started opening up to me. And it might have to do with the fact that I'm a life coach, so they would ask me questions. But I just felt like they were willing to be a little bit more vulnerable because they saw me sharing that same vulnerability.
Oh.
It's just like I'm sharing with your listeners. I'm being vulnerable. I'm telling you things about my life that I am not a perfect person, and I always try to be, but I'm not, and I recognize that, and I'm moving forward. And moving forward in so much more confidence in myself and happiness and lightness, I guess, in my life.
And you nailed it. It's about showing up authentically and vulnerably. And I think today's women now more than ever, they choose to play, live, have friendships with, and of course work with women who have those same values. They're tired of themselves of hiding behind a mask. So they want to surround themselves with women who show them that it's possible to come out from behind the masks. And I think that's why, as you've done the inner work and have stepped out to honor your truth and live your purpose, more and more women are finding you because it's so refreshing to find someone who's living that way. And I got to say, it inspires them to believe in that possibility.
Yeah, and in doing that inner work is what inspires that. I can coax that out of people and I can help them find their goals, but really it all goes back to within and that self-discovery and understanding how imperfectly perfect you are, and that when you dig a little bit deeper, it's scary, but there's just so much more to the layers than just those outer expectations or outer characteristics that you allow people to see.
Oh, so true.
It's allowing people to see deeper.
It's so true. And, as our conversation comes to an end, Karen, and I swear it seems like it's flown by, we have a few seconds. Is there a final piece of wisdom or something that you're guided to share with our listeners as we come to a close?
Sure. I believe strongly that one of the things that you need to do every single day is something for yourself. I very strongly believe in a self-care routine, and I do that through talking with my angels, getting enough sleep, and all those things. But along with my gratitude practice, I have a separate journal. That's my acknowledgement journal, and it's so important every day to just acknowledge your actions, no matter how small they were, to be able to tell yourself, congratulations, I did this. We spend so much of our life looking for the next thing that we don't take the opportunity to celebrate and be in the moment of what we've done. So that would be my word of encouragement, is to acknowledge your actions no matter how small they are. So if it's, I want to start exercising, and you had that thought today, write that thought down, because then maybe tomorrow you'll take the next step. And at the end of the week, look at that list of acknowledgments that you had, and I really bet that you'll have a smile on your face, and you'll just feel so amazing and passionate about moving forward and exploring what's around the corner.
What a beautiful tip. I love that, an acknowledgement journal, because women have the tendency to acknowledge what they see in everyone else, but don't give ourselves enough credit for what we do in a day. And I don't mean do like from the to-do list, the doing energy. I'm talking about just the internal shifts, all of it, how we show up in the world. So I've never heard of that before. So thank you so much for sharing that beautiful tip. And everyone, I want to invite you to learn more about Karen, her work, and visit her site at KarenSpaiches.com, and allow me to spell her last name. It is Spaiches. And get to know the inspiring work she is doing in the world. So, Karen, I want to thank you for sharing space with me today and opening your heart and sharing your journey with such love and vulnerability.
Thanks, Linda. And I just want to say that you are such an inspiration to women who are really trying to get their gifts out into the world. And you're a living example of how you can do this and still feel good inside. And I think about you every day as I'm building my business. And I just want to thank you and let you know that I appreciate the work that you're doing.
Oh, now you're going to get me to cry. Thank you, honey. Thank you for being part of my journey. And thank you, everyone, for joining me for Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy. Listen in every Tuesday at 2 p.m. for more sacred conversations with visionary women just like Karen, who are here to share their feminine wisdom to support you in living your best life. Until next Tuesday, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.